Hi, my name is Jim Francis and welcome to this quick start video. I've had the rare privilege to train literally thousands and thousands of people all over the US, Canada, and the UK. And as I've trained those individuals, I've really come down to a series of steps that have made them successful. A series of philosophies, beliefs, concepts, and specific strategies that can get them onto the path very quickly. So what I'd like to do in this quick start video is to kind of give you some of the tools that will make you successful over the next 30, 60, 90 days. And when I talk about that, I'm not just talking about some specific action steps, but I'm also talking about some philosophies that can make a major difference in terms of your long-term wealth, and your long-term wealth specifically investing in real estate. The first area I'd like to discuss with you is really talking about commitment. You know, quite often we talk about, we make a commitment, we will see the end result of that commitment over time. But what happens for a lot of people is they say, yes, I want to do that, but they don't commit the time to actually do it. I know in my own real estate investing career that it was the scheduling of the time that made a major difference. And for me that was pretty simple. What I did is I scheduled Monday night from 6 o'clock to 10 p.m. to the commitment to look and learn about real estate and to buy real estate, and Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And I kind of broke it up into two major areas. The first area was that Monday night where I did strategies, I learned about concepts, I read books, I went online, did research, I wrote contracts, I ran numbers, those kinds of things. And the other half of that was actually getting out in the field, looking at properties, inspecting properties, negotiating with owners, getting comfortable and talking to owners about their properties, their homes, how to buy them, what kind of things they will accept, what things they won't accept. And I know if you simply schedule your time, you will be successful. So one of my challenges for you in this quick start video is really to schedule some time. It doesn't matter to me whether it's 4 hours a week or 8 hours a week or 16 hours a week. Make that commitment of the time, and I think if you make that commitment of the time, you'll see the net effect of that over time in terms of your real estate investing. And make that commitment for a period of time, 6 months, a year, give it a good shot. For some people what happens with them, they say, okay, I'm going to make the commitment of time, and they schedule 8 hours this week, 8 hours next week, they put out 10 offers and they don't get a deal and they quit. For me, it wasn't that way. What it was I was going to schedule that 8 hours a week, the 4 hours and 4 hours, for a 1 year period. And at the end of 1 year, to see whether it works. Now, in my case, got kind of lucky. Within the first 4 days, did my first real estate transaction in terms of investment property and bought a house for $745 that was worth $128 in that range. So it was very successful for me. And it can be that for you if you simply schedule the time and effort and make sure that you make that kind of commitment. I'd also challenge you a little bit to make a commitment in terms of education. I know one of the reasons I'm standing in front of you is that I've made a major commitment in terms of my education, whether that's learning about financial strategies, stock strategies, or tax strategies, or real estate strategies. I've spent over $81,000 on books, tapes, and education. And I'm not saying to you that you need to spend that kind of money. What I am saying to you is that you've got to commit some of the time and effort to learn some new strategies, because it's that strategy that can make a difference in this game compared to somebody else. If you know 3 foreclosure strategies, and I know 40 plus, I'm going to have a little bit of an advantage in the marketplace than you because I know a couple more strategies than you. I'm a little more flexible, a little more creative, those kinds of things. So you do want to make a commitment in terms of your education as part of this. And obviously commit to do some of the work too. Work smart, don't work hard, but you want to make sure that you are working out there in the marketplace and committing a specific period of time. I also know in this game that you kind of have to have the right philosophy. And there's 2 major philosophies that I think are important in terms of real estate investing and also building long-term financial wealth. The first is what I call the wealth wheel. The wealth wheel was actually created as a function of interviewing 50-plus business people, millionaires, successful real estate investors. And as I interviewed those individuals, I came to common themes, common strategies, common things they focus on. And as I started to come up with those common areas that they focus on, I developed it into 6 major steps. And those 6 major steps apply to small business, they apply to real estate investing, they apply to the stock market, they apply to business, in terms of having a job. And if we follow those strategies, we can actually use any one of those vehicles to be successful. However, I really believe that real estate can, because of leverage, can be one of the major ways to get to success. So I want to kind of share that strategy with you a little bit. Then I want to talk a little bit about the 40-40-20 plan. And the 40-40-20 plan is really a balanced approach to real estate investing. It can be a balanced approach to investing in the stock market or even in business, but in terms of real estate investing, it's a very balanced approach. So we'll talk about that. In terms of the wealth wheel itself, the wealth wheel for me is really broken into 6 major sections. So if there's a bit of a pie chart, I'd break it into 6 sections. And the first section I'd talk about is cash flow. In real estate or in small business or in the stock market or anything, you've got to focus on cash flow strategies. In the real estate game, what that really means is we need to be focusing on lease option strategies, we need to be focusing on rental strategies, we need to be focusing on maybe vacation rental strategies where we can positive cash flow because of the peak seasons, those kinds of things. We might focus on a little bit of discount mortgage kind of thing to build cash flow, but we want to build our cash flow. And a major challenge for a lot of people is when they get into this game, they look for the big windfall right away. They look for the big hit right away, and they don't focus on cash flow. And cash flow is such an important part of the equation. If I can find a property that's going to cash flow $200 a month or $300 a month, if I have 10 of those, I'm earning $3 grand a month. If I have 20 of those, I'm making $6 grand a month. And that can build our long-term cash flow and give us the ability, if we want to, sometime in the future, to kind of walk away from our job. That what some people call the just over broke, right? and I'm not saying that you want to walk away from your job, because there are lots of people out there that love what they do. I've got some great teacher friends. They love what they're doing, but they're not getting paid what they should be getting paid for what they're doing. So they invest in real estate really to augment that, to do what they love. And if that's you, that's great, fantastic, more power to you. But at some point, we can get pretty good in terms of our cash flow so that we could decide if we want to keep that job or not, or just augment it in terms of income. By the way, if we build cash flow, one of the things we do as well is we increase our likelihood of getting more leverage in terms of mortgage money, if that makes sense to you. Because when a mortgage group is looking at you, they're looking at all of your cash flow, all of your finances in general speaking. So if you've got both business income, both job income, and you've also got cash flow from properties, that can help us in terms of leveraging more cash in terms of mortgages, and that's part of the game, is to see how much opium we can use. And opium meaning other people's money, right? So we want to make sure that we're leveraging as much of that cash as we can. The second major area we want to focus off in terms of the wealth wheel is really appreciating value. And think about appreciating value. Right now in the U.S. and also internationally, there are places we can put our money where we can get much better than a 10% return on our investment or 6% return on our investment. There are 8 states in the U.S. right now that can get you about a 20% return or greater. So it really begs the question, should we be investing in our specific location? And I ask that question myself pretty regularly, and one of the things I do is I look to where the hot markets are, where the appreciating markets are. I track that, I find out that information so I can put my money in that specific area. I've been in the UK for a period of time, and you might hear me say something like process every once in a while. And when I was in the UK, there are choices in the UK that are different than here. You can get a 6% appreciation in maybe the London market, or you can maybe take that cash and go to Spain and get a 22% appreciation. And what do you think is a better choice? That's right. If you look for the appreciating market, that can be a very good, solid strategy in terms of our long-term wealth. And I do know the difference between a 10% return, appreciation, interest rate, and a 25% appreciation return. Think about it. If I take $100,000 and put it into a 10% appreciating asset, an interest, return on investment, that asset is going to be worth $1 million at the end of 25 years. 100 grand at 10%. Over 25 years is going to be worth $1 million, right? If I take that same 100 grand and put it in a 25% appreciating market, that money in 25 years is going to be $26 million because of the compounding effect of that 25%. So it does make sense financially for us to be looking for appreciating markets on a regular basis. The next major area is what I call big hits. And all of the millionaires that I've interviewed and spent time with and discussed strategies with, or took their courses or programs or went golfing with or took them to dinner or whatever it might be, all of them talked about getting that windfall every once in a while, that a windfall came. But they didn't go looking for the windfall came. Kind of reminds me of, people, whether they fish or they go hunting for the whale. The problem with hunting for the whale is that you go out there in that little dinghy and you've got that big spear you're going to throw at them, and you throw that spear and maybe you miss and then the whale eats you, right? Much better process is to wait for the whale to get beached and then just use it that way. So we don't go hunting for the big deal. The big deal tends to come for us. Unfortunately for a lot of people in this game is what they do is they hear some story about somebody being really successful, making 100 grand or 200 grand, and they say, that's what I want to do too, and they take all of their money, invest in one deal, and either they make it or they lose it. And I think there's a better way to doing that, and I call that the 40-40-20 plan, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But big hits are part of the process, but we want to focus on them first. I'd much rather focus on cash flow and appreciation first, and then have the big hit come to us over time. The fourth major area is really leverage. When I talk about leverage, what I'm talking about is leveraging our time and leveraging our money. I know the power of leverage over time. You know, if I take $10,000 and I invest in a $100,000 property, and it's appreciating at something that's fairly reasonable, let's say 10%. If I put 10 grand out this year, and that 100,000 property next year is going to be worth 10%, right? Well, that means, you know, I'm getting my money back. You know, that's a pretty good return on my investment. I'm getting 100% of my money back at the end of 1 year. You know, and that's the power of leverage. And that asset is going to appreciate every year at 10% when the compounding kicks in. It's going to have a major effect in terms of the long-term wealth. So we want to use leverage effectively. And, you know, the old rule for wealth used to be, let's take our money, put it into a house, have a job for 40 years, and then at the end of 40 years, you know, our house will be paid off. We don't have to worry about the mortgage payment. You know, and I think that's an old rule for wealth. And in fact, the new rule for wealth is probably, you know, wait a couple of years, have it appreciate a little bit, build some equity in it, refinance, take that cash out, and take that 50 grand out or 100 grand out, break it into 2 units or 4 units, and go buy another property and let it appreciate, you know, and let it appreciate over time. And you got, you know, 4 or 5 of those, and you keep doing that every 3 or 5 years, pretty much can guarantee that you're going to have a very nice nest egg at the end of your life. And it doesn't necessarily take a long time either, you know, so we can get to use that leverage very quickly. In fact, I know for a fact, and I make the statement pretty regularly, if you simply buy one house a year for 10 years, at the end of year 15, the likelihood is you're going to be a multimillionaire, because of the power of leverage and appreciation. And I'm assuming, of course, you've got pretty good appreciation. You've got something that is, you know, 8%, 10%, 12% or greater. So we can use those tools to build our long-term wealth. In terms of leverage, too, we have to think a little bit about our time. You know, used to be that I used to go out there and drive neighborhoods and have realtors send me contracts, and I look in the newspaper and those kinds. And that can be an effective way to get started. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. In fact, I suggest that you do that as part of our program. You want to get started that way. However, over time, you know, a much better way of building our sourcing part of the equation is to either use investors, you know, that are part of our network, part of our friends, that can point us in the right direction, maybe have an extra deal, you know, go in with them, whatever it might be, or associations which have the power to buy big blocks of properties or get into developments prior to everybody else, and use those associations to really leverage our time. Because I found that, you know, time is probably the greatest commodity, and you want to make sure that you do want to leverage your time. You know, after the fourth area, you want to get into the fifth area, which really for me is tax planning. You know, 1/3 to 1/2 of our wealth is going to come from tax planning and asset protection. And that really means that we want to make sure that every dollar we spend is tax deductible so that we can get that 30 cents back, depending on your tax bracket. But we want to be able to make sure that all of our lifestyle is deductible. You know, we want to make business trips, right, so that we can write off some of those expenses. You know, we want to make sure that we put our structures into LLCs or C corporations or S corporations so they're tax efficient. We want to make sure we're using a land trust as a vehicle to get to success. And if you don't know what those things are, you don't know how they function, then one of my challenges for you during this quick start is to kind of make a commitment to yourself to go, you know, every week learn more about taxes. Spend 10-15 minutes learning about taxes or tax structures, or what's the difference between a C and an S, or, you know, what is a land trust, and how can that land trust document protect us in terms of our liability, or protect us in terms of our name. So we do want to focus on those kinds of things. The sixth major thing I noticed with the 50-plus millionaires, successful business people and real estate investors, was that they spent a fair amount of money and effort on time on education. In fact, one of the philosophies I learned from them was that when you learn, you earn. You know, and I really do believe that. You know, I've spent over $81,000 on books, tapes, and education, and I'm not suggesting that you need to spend that too, but I know it's one of the reasons that I have the ability to impact lives nowadays. I have the ability to teach people and train people all over the world. And it's really because that education, that knowledge, gives me more distinctions, more flexibility than the other person. So when I'm looking at a deal, I can look at it a different way than somebody who's pretty new to the game might be. And it has advantage. It gives me advantage over other investors. So I do want to make a commitment in terms of education, learning new strategies, learning foreclosure strategies, or asset protection strategies, or wholesale buying, or lease option strategies, or contract for deed strategies. So I want to learn more about those kinds of strategies and make a commitment to that on a regular basis. That's kind of the wealth wheel, is kind of the system, and then as you start to think about those first three elements, the cash flow, the appreciation, and the big hits part of the equation, I kind of believe in what I call the 40-40-20 plan. And the 40-40-20 plan is, the first place we should start is probably on cash flow. So we want to focus on vacation strategies. We want to focus on lease option strategies. We want to focus on rental strategies. So we start to build that $200, $300 per property per month, build our long-term cash flow, because that will help us on the mortgage game, that will help us on the cash flow game, and and make our lifestyle better, as well as give us the ability to kind of walk away from that job if we want to. Because a lot of people have that plan. They have the 40-40-40 plan, which means they work for 40 hours a week for 40 years, only at the end of that plan to take a 40% pay cut. And I think that's the wrong plan. If you want to get on the right plan, it's the 40-40-20 plan, which is 40% of our income, our nest egg, our portfolio, our investment needs to go into cash flow first. The next 40% needs to go into appreciating property. And I know the appreciating property part of the equation is probably the more important part of the equation. I think it's more important than cash flow, but we want to focus on cash flow first. Because if we have the flexibility of having cash flow, then we don't have to worry about the fact that that appreciating property may not cash flow right away, but it's growing at 22% per year, and over 5 years, 4.3 years, it's going to literally double our asset. If that makes sense to you. So we want to focus on appreciation. So we need to be focusing on those 8 states. And they change, but focusing on those 8 states that have high appreciation. The places like North Carolina, South Carolina, Nevada, California, Texas. One that's kind of out there a little bit is Utah. Utah is not as high as it should be, but it's appreciating, and the outlook for it long term looks good. So we want to focus on those kinds. Or Arizona. I'd be a little cautious about Arizona. Certainly the Phoenix area right now might be oversaturated with investors, but I might look outside of Phoenix a little bit in terms of areas. So we do want to focus on those kind of states because they have great appreciation. And then we want to focus on the big hits, and the big hits is really the foreclosure market, the ugly property market, an options play, a syndication, a land play, a land development, maybe a 5-year plan or a 7-year plan, but take a certain portion of our income, our cash, and put it into that kind of play. And I'd probably suggest to you that no more than 20% of that. Make sure the 40% in cash flow, 40% appreciation, and then you got that little higher risk, higher reward piece is really on the 20% in terms of the higher risk kind of area. And I think that's a good balanced approach in terms of our real estate investing, if not just investing in generally. So we want to kind of work on that kind of plan. Now that really means that if I'm going to focus on cash flow first, then I need to get clear on what my goals are to generate that cash flow. And what I'm saying to you for that is if I know that I need to have $3,000 a month to kind of be okay in terms of my livelihood, my cash flow kind of thing, well, that's probably 10 properties at $300 a property. So that means if I'm going to plan on getting those 10 properties in the next year, that maybe my goal should be that I'm going to buy 1 property a month for the next year so I can get to the 10, if that makes sense to you. Well, if I'm going to do that, that means I'm going to probably have to put 20 offers out there to get that 1 property. If I'm going to do 20 offers, that means that weekly I've got to be putting 5 offers a week out into the marketplace to get to that 1 property, if that makes sense to you. So what I'm saying to you is that once you've established what that goal is, then you want to chunk it down. So my cash flow goal might be 1 cash flow property a month. Then I need to think about my appreciating goal. An appreciating property might cost me a little bit more, so maybe I can only afford to do 1 or 2 a year. So maybe, and then I need to figure out where do I want to buy those properties. For me right now, the beach area is a great strategy. I think it always has been. I haven't heard a lot of people saying, they're going to retire to Minnesota. Most of them say, I'm going to retire to Florida or the beach or an ocean or something like that. And it really drives the prices. And beach strategy, waterfront strategy can be a great strategy, and one I really believe in. And I just saw an article from Sir John Templeton just recently, and I had the privilege and pleasure of meeting John in January. And when I met him, I was interested in his strategy. I also read his article, and it basically said, he's a big stock guy, but he does have a real estate strategy. It's location, 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 buy at the beach. So I do believe in that strategy. So we want to make sure we're looking for solid appreciating properties. So where is it for you? What appreciating area are you going to pick? should be in the 20% or greater market. That might be a vacation rental, that might be a very strong 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, or a 4-bedroom, 2-bath home in a nice community that maybe you're going to rent out. It might even lose a little bit of money. I don't like that strategy, but it may, or break even. But I know the appreciating value is going to be 20% or greater, and therefore it's going to offset that. So what is that for you? What is the goal for you? Is it 1 a year, 2 a year? Make that goal and make it a reality. The next piece is, the 20% on the higher risk, higher reward kind of thing. And that might be, a land play, and we might have a 3-year land play. So maybe I'm going to target one of those deals in the next 3 to 5 years. Or it may be a foreclosure where I got to put up a lot of cash, and I've got to do fix up. It might cost me $100 grand out of pocket. Maybe I should target one of those every year or every other year or something like that. But that also means I got to kind of start to think about, how do I find them? And how do I source them? And do I really know about foreclosures enough? And maybe I need to learn more about foreclosures. And maybe one of the things in my tickler file in my action plan is I want to go down to the courthouse on a regular basis and learn about foreclosures, and or find somebody who's doing the foreclosure market, or maybe attend a workshop about foreclosures, or whatever that might be. But we want to kind of plan those out in terms of our weekly goals, monthly goals, annual goals, weekly goals, and monthly goals and weekly goals, to make sure that we're on the path to success every single week. So that 8 hours a week, whatever that is, we know that this is specifically what we're going to focus on in terms of that time and effort. One of the things I'd suggest to you very strongly is you'll want to read your materials. You want to go through your workbook and learn about lease option strategies and foreclosure steps and those kinds of things. You'll also want to pick up the 25 steps to becoming a successful real estate investor, and maybe use that as a tool to start to build the next 30 days. I know if you simply take that book, and you take that book and you take one of those steps every single day for the next 30-odd days, that's going to get you on the path to success, because those steps were set up that way to put you on the path. So that might be our simple plan, is what I'm going to do is just take one of those steps every single day for the next 25, 30 days, and that will get me on the path to investing and getting that first property, or getting a good plan in terms of that property. Kind of after that, what we want to kind of focus on is maybe developing our power team. And what do I mean by a power team? As you do this game, you're kind of an independent, but really you work with other people to buy property. And you need to start to build a power team, a group of support people that will help you, point you in the right direction, give you the right tools, give you the right advice to buy the right properties. I'd suggest very strongly that a couple of people on your power team should, first of all, be a coach or a mentor. Somebody who's done it before. Now, when I say that, a lot of people think, well, what I'll do is I'll go to one of those investment clubs, and I'll find somebody there to be my coach and my mentor. What I find with those investment clubs is they can be a good source of information and contacts, but usually there's two groups of people. There's a group of sharks, and there's a group of newbies, new people into the marketplace. And the sharks usually have an agenda. They're trying to sell them a property, they're trying to make some commissions on them, or trying to do whatever that might be. And they may give you some good advice in the process, because each one is kind of independently good or bad, but you probably want to get some third-party coaching or mentorship. Somebody who just has your interest at heart, not their interest at heart, if that makes sense to you. So I'm not saying you shouldn't go to those. What I am saying is, whoever that mentor is, make sure that their best interest is your interest. And I found in my own life, the only way I know that for sure is usually paying them. So it's not uncommon for me to pay for coaching or mentorship to make sure that I get that third-party independent, they're in my team, in my corner kind of thing. The second thing is we want to maybe get a realtor on our team, or several realtors on our team, to kind of get the ball rolling in terms of property. And if you're thinking about commercial property, you want a commercial realtor. If you're thinking about residential property, think about a residential realtor or sales associate or a broker. We want to get one of those individuals or several of them on our team to get the deal flow going for us. We also want to get a mortgage broker or a couple of mortgage brokers on our team. Mortgage brokers can be a great resource in terms of accessing cash. And quite often I find that they tend to be a better resource than perhaps the bank. The bank has a certain amount of cash, a certain amount of flexibility. Brokers tend to have a lot more flexibility, a lot more access to cash, certainly worth paying the point or the fee or whatever it might be to get access to that cash. Title company, real estate lawyer, either or. With the real estate lawyer, for some of you, contracts might be a little bit daunting when you're first starting out. So it may be a good idea to have a real estate lawyer that just looks over your contracts to make sure that you don't miss anything. You know, they cross the T, dot the I, make sure that you've got the right addendum or they're protecting you. So that's not a bad idea as well. Appraiser, home inspector, we certainly want to get those individuals on our team and get that ball rolling as well. And we probably want to have a power team in each of the locations. So if you know, if you're in another state and you're thinking about Florida, you want to have a power team in Florida. If you're thinking about Texas, you want to have a power team in Texas. So it's good to research the specific areas that we're going to be investing in for a power team. We also want to work on sourcing. Now, typically when you think about sourcing, and I'm specifically talking about sourcing of property, a lot of people, the way they start is they drive neighborhoods, which is not a bad way to start, because within your 10 mile of your house, your location, you're going to find a couple of dozen properties that are available through realtors and also through for sale by owners, and we can talk to those folks and probably get a more creative deal with a for sale by owner than just a realtor group or something like that. So we do want to do the drive the neighborhoods. We also probably want to do the newspapers as well. And you probably want to code your ads A, B, C. You call the A ads first, the ones that have creative words in them or creative financing, you know, the ones that are looking for a lease option. Those people are flexible, and probably we can do a deal with them, so we want to call those first. And it's a great way to get the ball rolling. Once we get the ball rolling in terms of driving neighborhoods and the newspapers, just a comment about the newspapers too, you might also call the renters in the newspaper, the for rent properties. Because, you know, if they're renting a property, likelihood is they're an investor, a landlord, and if they're an investor or a realtor or an investor or a landlord, they probably have other properties that they may want to sell, maybe even that one that's in the newspaper, but they also probably have already a network of people that they work with, and we might be able to tap into their power team as well. Get a realtor, a couple of realtors on our team, get an association on our team so that we can let them use their buying power to buy the program or buy the property. So we want to get that group on our team, and get an investor on your team. You know, somebody that you know and trust and can kind of point you in the right direction. We do want to get a series of tools to be successful as well. What do I mean by tools? What I'm talking about there is we want to make sure that we get a computer, internet, software programs, contracts. You know, you need buyer's contracts and seller's contracts and lease option contracts. So we need to either go out there and find a lawyer that's going to supply them, we buy them from them, or we get some software program that does that. I personally believe in software because, you know, you can put your database into it, take pictures of your property, put notes in there. You can run all the numbers, do a 5-year plan, do a cash-on-cash analysis, do a cap analysis, you know, see if it's 10% cap rate of 10 or better, you know, see what the effective rent income multiplier is. Get those numbers all done for us using software as opposed to, you know, us having to run those numbers ourselves. So tools will definitely be something we want to invest, spend some time with. So get a computer, software program, get your contracts in order, get your forms, you know, just the forms to fill out in terms of a property. As we inspect a property, we want to kind of have a checklist of things we want to inspect. So we want to get a couple of those sheets printed, maybe 50 or 100 of them, because we're going to look at maybe 50 or 100 properties over the next 6 months, and we'll want to make sure we keep the details on them. We want to make sure we get online. You know, when I talk about online, there are some great websites out there we'll want to kind of visit, kind of get familiar with. You know, we might want to go to Realtor.com if we're investigating a new location. Well, that'll get us to the MLS listings, and we look at the MLS listings, we'll be able to take a look at a new market, see what the average price is or what the list prices are, know that maybe that's 10 or 15% higher than what the fair market value is. And we'll get an idea of a marketplace. And then we might go to Dominia, or we might go to HomeGain.com and take a look at what property sold for in that marketplace. So we're getting an idea of the fair market value. Good idea to have a realtor on your team so you can get comparables done, comps done. You know, they can say, oh, well, geez, 5 houses sold on that street for X amount of money, and then figure it out on a square footage basis that, geez, each of those houses sold for $154 per square foot. And we kind of know that the square foot per dollar rate is 150 or whatever that might be in your specific marketplace. You might want to go to NetR Online, and NetR Online can get us to the courthouses. When we get to the courthouses, the recorder's office, that will help us get to the foreclosure side of the fence, and we can see what kind of foreclosures are happening in our marketplace if we're thinking about foreclosures as kind of a game we want to play. Might go to HUD.gov, and at HUD.gov go to the Homes for Sale section. We'll get to the Homes for Sale section. You know, there'll be the Veterans Administration and the DEA and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. There'll be, at the bottom, there'll be multifamily houses, apartment complexes that will be for sale, and I can actually sign up for that service, and they'll send me, you know, what apartment complexes are going to auction and what period of time. I can take a look at HUD property and maybe get a HUD broker pull the bid package and get familiar with the bid package and maybe bid online. When I say that, you got to bid through a broker, so you've got to work with the broker. There's usually a fee with your bid, but you can get discounts if you do that. One of the important things to do there is make sure you go visit the property, because they are in foreclosure. And when people are in foreclosure, sometimes they do funky things. They leave the house in bad shape, or they, as they're leaving, they damage some of it. So we want to make sure that we do a drive-by, take a look at that property, take a peek, make sure we go research on the courthouse, that kind of thing. If we're going to go to NetR Online, we're going to go visit the courthouse. One of the things I might suggest after that is for you to go down to the courthouse and maybe research your own property or a friend's property. Go find out, what information is down at the courthouse, whether it's on microfiche or whether it's on a computer system, and go take a look at that. Just ask the clerks. They'll be glad to help you in terms of researching a property. I'd find out when the auction is. And it changes by county, kind of. So you'll want to see if it's weekly or monthly. But go down to an auction, and see the process of how they auction property in foreclosure. Maybe get to meet some of the people at the auction. Maybe the people who are bidding. Find out if they're the bank, or find out whether they're an investor. That might be a good source of flipping a property in terms of the person saying, well, I really don't want to own it. I just want to make some money on it. Maybe they'll flip it onto you. One of the things I would do is make sure that I start to build my credit. And what do I mean by that? Well, what I would do is make sure that I go to the TRW or go to Equifax right now, some of the reporting agencies, and pull my credit file. See what's on it, because you never know. There could be some major errors in it. There's a lot of statistics out there saying that there's errors and problems and that kind of stuff. So we want to pull our credit, find out if it's good. If it's not good, we want to fix it using the Fair Credit Reporting Act. We probably want to take a look at maybe increasing our credit in terms of our credit cards. We've got to be careful about that, because we don't want to have too much credit compared to our income, because that can affect our FICO score. But it's also a good idea to have some credit, so that we can, if we need to pull $5,000 or $10,000 out of a credit card to get a deposit done, or to get something done quickly in terms of it. Maybe look at refinancing our house and taking some of the cash out, or getting an equity loan against our property. Maybe seek some financial advice with respect to that. But it can be a good idea to leverage that cash into other properties, providing it's not making you strapped in terms of the payments. So you want to make sure that you start to do that. Maybe find some sources of cash, whether that's going into the newspaper and looking for money available, because usually those are people that are investing in real estate themselves, or have money to invest in businesses or real estate. They may be hard money lenders that have a steep interest rate, but they can get you $100K like that. So we might want to do that. Or we might look for joint venture partners, maybe some of your friends' family, that can put up some of the cash, you put up some of the sweat equity or the work to find the properties and kind of get that part of the equation worked out. We probably want to start thinking about it as a business, and as part of being a business, we want to learn a little bit about taxes. So I probably might want to go to the irs.gov and probably pull a couple of publications. A couple of publications that come to mind for me might be publication 334, which is all about small business expenses, or 535, what changes have been happening in the last little while. We probably want to pull up the publication on how rent income is treated. So we'll want to go to that website, look up that information, pull those publications, get familiar with an S corporation or C corporation, decide if we want to have a corporation. I definitely want to find out about land trusts. So that's a great tool that we want to learn about. So either research that on the internet or whatever it might be. So that's part of that continuing education part of the equation. We want to make sure that we're making a commitment to that. I probably want to announce to the world that I'm in this game. I know one of the mentors that teaches out in the program basically says, hey, within your database, within the people that you know, the 200 people that you know, because most of us do know 200 people, whether that's casually or whatever, there's going to be people that have properties for sale, and there's going to be people that want to buy properties. One of the things you might be able to do is to buy that property and sell it on to someone else. And that brings up the other part of the equation is, where's going to be your ongoing source of coaching, education, and mentorship? So make sure that you do get a coach or a mentor that can put you on the path to success. Destiny has many paths. I'm glad that we had a chance to share a few steps together. Until we meet again, may God hold you softly in the palm of the hand. And I wish you good luck, and make sure you do follow this path, because if you follow this path, it can be a major shift in your life, a major change in your destiny, and can really reach you financial freedom.